Testing, 1, 2, 3. I want to be considered a jazz poet, blowing along blues in an afternoon jam session on Sunday. I take 242 choruses. My ideas cry and sometimes roll from chorus to chorus, or from halfway through a chorus to halfway into the next. Mexico City Blues, Jack Kerouac. Written all in verse. The poems aren't titled. They're, like I've just read, 242 choruses. Some of it's awful stuff. Some of it's pretty good. An autobiographical novel, Kenneth Rexroth. I've literally read the cover of it. He's up here on the board. He's the kind of the godfather of jazz poetry. Chicago, 1920s. A lot of the poetry readings were trash, but all the important poets around Chicago read there too. Here happened the first reading of poetry to jazz that I know of. The readers were several people I can't recall, and Mark Turkeyfull, Sam Putnam, Louis Rosenberg, and myself. I suppose it was Dick Ruff who, you know, that's a fake name. His real name is Dave Tuff. He's a legendary Chicago drummer. Precedes the great, what's his name? Who was that great drummer? You know, they made a movie about him. He drummed for Benny Goodman. Jesus Christ.
Oh,
who? Jack?
Gene Krupa.
Gene Krupa. So he came a few years before Krupa. I suppose it was Dick Ruff who brought down a whole lot of drums of a kind I'd never seen before. I guess they were congos and bongos and such. I remember some Chinese and Japanese drums. Anyway, there was a most exotic percussion battery, and to this, and a piano, and a horn, and once in a while a bass, I read some poetry. The percussion makes it sound frightfully arty, but couldn't have been too arty with Casey Frank at the piano. Who the others were, I don't know. The horn was so drunk he could hardly stand, and eventually blew very nicely sitting down on a backward kitchen chair. About this time, Langston Hughes was doing the same thing in New York. I read the poems I had read on the soapbox, a lot of Whitman and Sandburg and popular low-life poetry to what nowadays would be called primitive piano as accompaniment. That is, the piano took the line most of the time. What I was witnessing was the development in a few places in Chicago, New York, and Paris of a cultural pattern that was to spread all over the world. In another generation, all professional people of any pretense to bohemianism in Sydney and Oslo did the things we did, but back in those days, we all knew one another. I'm afraid that I can't provide any inside information about the formative years of jazz for the simple reason that none of us knew that this was what was happening. We didn't know we were making history, and we didn't think we were important. All right. Now, Rexroth, this book is one of the most interesting autobiographies I've ever read. I doubted the veracity of many of it, and other people did much in here, thinking no one person could have lived that full of life and done all those things, but other people said the same thing, and he's proved them wrong every step of the way. So if you're looking for a good autobiographical read, you know, Rexroth. Yeah, he's going to pop up a little bit later in San Francisco, but for right now, I can't do this with my stuff. So you're going to have have to put up with it. So, okay, we're in Chicago in the 20s. That was Rex Roth. Also, a forerunner of jazz poetry was Vachel Lindsay, who most of you will remember from your high school canon. He did not write jazz poetry. In fact, he didn't even like jazz, but he was a real musical type guy, and his poetry had a lot of rhythm. You might remember the Congo, which has I think been banished from the canon for being kind of racist, but it was my favorite poem in high school simply because it turned me on to the rhythmic possibility of poetry. You know, we were reading Whitman and Emily Dickinson and Colin Bryant and all these people, but Lindsay had these fabulous, rhythmic poems. The Congo, boomly, 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 boom. So he's kind of a forerunner of the scene. And he was a vagabond poet. He literally walked across the Midwest and down the South singing for his supper. He would publish little books of his own poems and some artwork, and he would go in there and knock on people's doors and offer to read poetry if they would feed him and give him a place to stay. So he's a real interesting character because there is a link between vagabonds and hobos and bohemianism. All right, also in Chicago was a fella named Maxwell Bodenheim, or Bodenheim. He's Max, and his girlfriend and maybe wife later on was Minna Foy, or Minna Loy, I forget her last name, but they were like a real interesting couple. And Max is going to move from Chicago to New York, and in Greenwich Village in the 20th, and he's going to be in the 20s, and he's going to become like the quintessential bohemian. Everything wild and crazy that was came to be known about Bohemia was embodied in Maxwell Bodenheim. And we got one fella out there right now who's going to read some of his poetry in a minute, but he's one of the great characters that we're not really that familiar with. So as I just read in the book, at this same time, Harlem Renaissance was taking place in the 20s, and Langston Hughes is the spokesperson for that. He is really, if Rex Roth is the grandfather of the jazz poetry, Langston is the father of jazz poetry. He's the first guy to really do it well, and to this day, he is kind of a spokesman for it. I don't have any of his stuff to read. If anybody wants to read any of his stuff, you can tell me and we'll do it. There's a hand up there. I do have some on tape we'll hear in a minute. But also in the Harlem Renaissance was County Cullen and Claude McKay, each of whom did a little jazz poetry, although I haven't been able to find stuff of theirs that is applicable to read. Also in that scene was the great funky Zora Neale Hurston, who was also one of the great characters of modern literature, but I'm not sure if she did jazz poetry or not. And I cannot find any descriptions of that like I found with Rex Roth in Chicago. I've got an autobiography of Langston here, and he hits all around it and hits all around it and describes the party scene, but he doesn't talk about them actually reading to jazz there. And Langston is another one of those guys who has a great autobiography. He lives such a interesting and full life. He has two autobiographies. He was a world traveler before 20, and then I just think the world of him. His poetry is kind of hard to read now because it seems real dated and it's in dialect, so it's kind of awkward to read. But things like Daybreak in Alabama and the Weary Blues, are really good stuff. So maybe I'll play some right now. Let's see if we can get it.
The Negro with a trumpet at his lips has a head of vibrant hair tamed down, patent leathered now until it gleams like jet, or jet a crown. The music from the trumpet at his lips is honey mixed with liquid fire. The rhythm from the trumpet at his lips is ecstasy distilled from old desire. Desire that is longing for the moon, where the moonlight's but a spotlight in his eyes.
Like I say, I thought I had him with some music on there, so excuse us there. All right, so we're going to go from the Harlem Renaissance of the 20s, and then there's going to be a lull. I don't have much at all to report in the 30s. Of course, the 30s was worldwide depression, and so the next really flare-up of jazz poetry is going to be in the 50s or the 40s. The scene, Chicago was the capital of jazz in the 20s and 30s, but by the 40s, the capital of jazz had moved to New York City, and especially with the ending of it was percolating in the early 40s. But it was a great time of change. Swing music had ruled the roost all through the 30s, but come the 40s, it was breaking down. People could no longer afford the big orchestras, and so the jazz world was changing, and the music was changing, and you're going to see the advent of bebop. That's going to be the bebop scene, and after the war, it just exploded. The art scene exploded on 3 levels, and at one time, New York was the literary capital of the world, the jazz capital of the world, and the visual art painting capital of the world. With the abstract expressionists in paintings, and all these three art mediums merged there, so it was a really, really exciting mixed scene, and they interacted with one another. Painters, there were some painters who were also musicians, and of course the beat generation was percolating, and jazz was the music of the beat generation. So the people, Kerouac becomes the spokesperson for that. He wrote about it, and he composed and wrote like that. Leroy Jones was on the scene. Ted Jones, they have the same last name in pronunciation, but they spell it differently. And of course, Leroy Jones is going to eventually change his name to Amiri Baraka. And then of course, you all know Ginsberg and all those people are there. I haven't really found any jazz poetry from Ginsberg, but he wrote about everything else. So anyway, you have a real strong scene. Kerouac partnered up with the musician David Amram, who's one of the forerunners of world music, and they did poetry readings up there at one of the clubs, and really took jazz poetry to another level. Kerouac was a great reader. He recorded one album with Steve Allen playing piano, which is a great album. Steve Allen's kind of an unlikely guy, but he did a really good job on it, okay, so, all right, I'm going to try to do my Kerouac thing. Like I say, he was a spokesperson of the beat generation, and the patron saint of the beats in jazz was Charlie Parker. So this is Kerouac's poem to Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker looked like Buddha. Charlie Parker, who recently died while laughing at a juggler on TV after weeks of strain and sickness, was called the perfect musician. And his expression on his face was as calm, proud, and beautiful as the image of the Buddha is represented in the east. The lettered eyes, the expression that says, all is well. All is well. This is what Charlie Parker said when he played. All is well. And you had the feeling of like early in the morning, or like a hermit's joy, or like some wild cry of a gang at a jam session, whale or wop. Charlie burst his lungs to reach the speed the speedsters wanted, and what they wanted was his eternal slowdown. A great musician and a great creator of forms that found expression in mores and what have you. Musically as important as Beethoven, though not regarded as such at all. A genteel conductor of stringed orchestras, in front of which he stood, proud and calm, like a leader of music in the great world historic night, and wailed his little saxophone, the alto, with piercing, clear lament, in perfect tune, in shining harmony. Wail, wop, do 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 And soon listeners reacted without showing it and began talking. Everybody's talking. Soon the whole joint is rocking, and Charlie Parker oodling them on to the brink of eternity with his Irish St. Patrick tootly stick. And how sweet a story it is to hear Charlie Parker tell it, whether on records or at sessions, official bits in clubs, shots in the arm for the wallet, gleefully whistled the perfect horn. Anyway, makes no matter. Charlie Parker, forgive me. Forgive me for not answering your eyes. Forgive me for not having an indication of that which you can devise. Charlie Parker, pray for me. Pray for me and everybody in the nirvanas of your brain where you hide, indulgent and huge, no longer Charlie Parker of the secret, unsayable name that carries with it merit not to be measured up, down, east, or west. Charlie Parker, lay the bane off me. Charlie Parker, lay the bane off me and everybody. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. For all poets, this mic works best the closer you get.
All right. First, I want to thank Craig, and I suspect Alicia, where are you, Alicia, for setting this up. Not something you see too often in Birmingham, although Birmingham's getting to be a better city. All right, this first piece is just a short piece that I wrote, and it is inspired by, as you'll see, Archie Shepp's seminal work, which you'll see mentioned in here. And Shepp was a guy who opened up the whole jazz tradition along with Ornette Coleman. he was one step behind Coleman, but he helped open it up and establish the whole free jazz movement, which is near and dear to my heart. But people like Cecil Taylor soon followed, along with several other, Albert Ayler, and others that my leaky memory cannot recall at the moment. But anyway, this is called Open Fire. Archie Shepp, on stage behind billowing smoke, past the bruise and the booze and the banter, squealing, squeaking, screeching, screaming, your fire music, fired up music, raging past Baldwin, raging the fire next time, rejecting the easy comforts, defying wire-bound authority, unleashed energy of fire music, burning down the house, cacophonous sounds taken to the streets, rising the low-down, the needy, the seedy, the left-outs, the dropouts, the down-and-outs, clamoring, contrapuntal, confrontational, crying out. Hambone, Los Ovidados, Malcolm, Semper Malcolm, flipping the switch, witnessing, regaling, firing up your horn, a new sound, a new sign for a new age, a jazz man's furnace of wild-ass protest. Craig mentioned Maxwell Bodenheim, pretty much long forgotten now guy, wouldn't you say, Craig?
Pretty much.
Yeah. But really major force in the beat movement. He came to New York from Chicago in the 20s and 30s, and he was an astonishing guy because he wrote between 1920 and about 1935, he wrote 15 novels, many of them well received. And then on top of that, he wrote about 12 or 15 books of poetry, also well received. And he was a true bohemian. He lived well for a while, and then by the late 30s, he fell on hard times, and he made his home in Greenwich Village. And he really helped establish what was the Bohemian, what became known as the Bohemians in Greenwich Village. And guys like Kerouac and Ginsberg and Herbert Huncke and William Burroughs all were friendly with him, caroused with him, and by the mid-40s he was really on hard times, literally a homeless guy, which was amazing, amazing fall from grace. I'll just read this little section that I excerpted about him. Maxwell Bodenheim was one of the beat poets, so says Jack Kerouac. Bodenheim was quite a figure of the jazz age, between alcohol, mental illness, homelessness, and general difficulty functioning in the modern world. And that's the kind of people that Ginsberg famously talks about in Howl. He was definitely among those. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness. That was Bodenheim. He and his third wife, not the woman that Craig was talking about, were brutally murdered by a man who had slept with Bodenheim's wife, possibly as part of a monetary transaction to keep her and him from starving. That's how down and out the guy was by the mid-50s. He was down and out, and eventually out cold. It's a pretty lurid story. That said, what follows, what I'm going to read, is an interesting poem. According to the original text, the odd number lines are to be spoken slowly and the even ones quickly. Well, I'm not going to do that. He may have been able to do it, especially on the drugs and the alcohol, and God only knows what else. All right, here it is. It's called Bringing Jazz. Last night I had an oboe dream. Whistlers in a boxcar, madness, bringing jazz. Their faces stormed in a hobo gleam, blinding all the grinding wheels and singing jazz. The boxcar gloried in its dirt. Just a hallelujah made of changing mud. And one old bum opened up his shirt, showing wounds of music in his ranting blood. The hobos sang with scorching notes, burning up the pain into a gale of jazz. While sadness poured in their shaking throats, like a molten bugle in a wail of jazz. The rails were jails for death and rust, holding up the cruel, dark blue speed of jazz. But life still stirred underneath their crust, little hums and clicks brought by the need of jazz. Within the boxcar, hobos leaped, fatalists and pagans in a carefree trap. When they sang of hunger's reaped, bread and wine of sound came from a dark god's lap. The hobos made a foxtrot blaze, scorning women, gliding in a sexless dance. And on their coats of ragged bays, ghosts of orchids fluttered down and looked askance. The jungle sent a moan of sound, made it blend in the oath of northern grime. A music came flaring and profound. A music came flaring and profound, played with a rapture half repelled and half sublime. And then I saw the dream's dark spring, hurricanes of jazz born from the underworld. St. Louis gal with a diamond ring danced with the mobs of hobos while their thunder swirled. That is Maxwell Bodenheim. To quote Craig, the guy was the real deal. All right, there you have it. Thank you.
We apologize for our heater. It didn't seem to want to work. This is the first time all year we've tried to turn it on.
Oh, raising money.
We just have to pretend we're in New York City in the 50s and living in one of those cold water flats. All right. Somebody raised his hand when we were talking about Langston. Charles, you want to do Langston?
Yeah, let me find this other sheet of paper. Craig was talking about Langston Hughes, and I had the privilege for a while, for quite a few years, going into classrooms in the city to work with poetry and music and stuff with kids. And this was a kind of a standard poem that I would always read because of it is filled with sensory wonderment for the state of Alabama. And so that's one of the ones I wanted to read. It's called Daybreak in Alabama. If you've never heard it, it is probably, like Craig was saying, one of his really wonderful poems that he wrote over his lifetime, which obviously means that he spent some time at some point somewhere in Alabama, or he had just a great imagination, which he did. It's called Daybreak in Alabama. When I get to be a composer, I'm going to write some music about daybreak in Alabama. And I'm going to put the prettiest songs in it rising out of the ground like a swamp mist and falling out of heaven like soft dew. And I'm going to put tall, tall trees in it, and the scent of pine needles, and the smell of red clay after rain, and long red necks, and poppy-colored faces, and big brown arms, and the field daisy eyes of black and white, black people. And I'm going to put white hands in it, and black hands, and brown and yellow hands, and red clay earth hands in it, touching everybody with kind fingers, and touching each other natural as dew. In that dawn of music, when I get to be a composer and write about daybreak in Alabama. Craig has Ntozake Shange's name up here, and she's no longer on the planet, but she was a playwright, a poet, and we got the fortune of seeing her in Asheville back in the early 90s at the Asheville Poetry Festival, and she also came to the Taos Poetry Circus. She had a beautiful way of interweaving Spanish and English in her poems, which is just incredible musical. So this poem is called I Live in Music. I live in music. Is this where you live? I live here in music. I live on C-sharp Street. My friend lives on B-flat Avenue. Do you live here in music? Sound falls around me like rain on other folks. Saxophones wet my face, cold as winter in St. Louis. Hot like peppers I rub on my lips, thinking they was lilies. I got 15 trumpets where other women got hips, and an upright bass for both sides of my heart. I walk round in a piano like somebody else be walking on the earth. I live in music, live in it, wash in it. I could even smell it. Wear sound on my fingers. Sound falls so full of music, you can make a river where your arm is, and hold yourself. Hold yourself in a music. It's called Habitat Rat Scat. Got a rat in my habitat. Crazy as a cat, my habitat rat. Got a rat in my habitat. Getting mighty fat, my habitat rat. My home is a rat habitat, so I got me a bat with rat-a-tat-tat. But the cat, wasn't scared by that. He just looked me in the face and started to scat. Ba-da-da, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da, Egad, I wasn't having any of that. So I went rat-a-tat-tat again with the bat. I even yelled, scat, scat. But the rat just kept on with its pittery pat. So I had no choice smashed it with the bat. Now it's flat, flatter than flat. That rat-a-tat bat smashed my habitat rat. So if you get a habitat rat, tell you what to do before your rat gets fat. Get a bat, go rat-a-tat-tat, maybe even yell out, scat, scat. But if your rat starts up a jazz-throated scat, just smash it with a bat. Smash your habitat rat in a flat. Flat.
So when Craig told me he was going to do this, I thought, as a poet, okay, what I definitely want to contribute. What do I want to read? And I thought about how the tradition of jazz poetry often had a social, political force to it. And for some reason, Tom Waits came to my mind, in particular, Hell Broke Loose on his album Bad As Me. It came out around 2011. I remember because I bought the album as soon as it came out, and this particular song really struck me because it breaks the rules of what I think of as a song. The music that's part of the song is not really what would be traditional music, and the lyrics are so much more of what would be a poem instead of what you would hear in a song. It was really disturbing to me when I first heard this song. I'm a Waits fan, but this was beyond. But it really grabbed me. A poet once said to me that sometimes poetry should kick the roses off the cesspool. And I think the lyrics to this song does that. I don't like this. So this is Tom Waits, Hell Broke Loose. Musicians, please join in as you may feel inspired. I had a good home, but I left. I had a good home, but I left. Right, left. That big fucking bomb made me deaf. A Humvee mechanic put his Kevlar on wrong. I guarantee you'll meet him with a suicide bomb. And hell broke loose. Hell broke loose. Big fucking ditches in the middle of the road. You pay $100 just for filling in the hole. Listen to the general every goddamn word. How many ways can you polish up a turd? Left, right, left. Left, right, left. Hell broke loose. Hell broke loose. How is is it that the only ones responsible for making this mess got their sorry asses stapled to a goddamn desk? Hell broke loose. Hell broke loose. Hell broke loose. Left, right, left. What did you do before the war? I was a chef. I was a chef. What was your name? I was Jeff. Jeff. I lost my buddy and I wept. I come down from the Met, so I slept. I had a good home, but I left. Pansied at the wind for a joke. I pranced right in with the dope. Glanced at her shin, she said no. Huh. Left, right, left. Nimrod Bodfish, have you any wool? Give me another body bag, the body bag's full. My face was scorched. I miss my home, I miss my porch. Left, right, left. Can I go home and march? Left, right, left, right. My staunch was a chin full of soap. That red said dinner with the Pope. Left, right, left. Kelly Soto got his thumbs blown off. Sergio's developing a real bad cough. Sergio's developing a real bad cough, and hell broke loose. Hell broke loose. Hell broke loose. Boom went his head away, and boom went Valerie. Ha! What the hell was it that the president said? Give them all a beautiful parade instead. Left, right, left. When I was over there and never got to vote, I left my arm and my coat. My mom, she died and never wrote. We sat by the fire native goat. Just before he died, he had a toke. Now I'm home, and I'm blind, and I'm broke. What is next?
They're murdering all the young men for half a century now. Every day they have hunted them down and killed them. They're killing them now. At this minute, all over the world, they're killing the young men. They know 10,000 ways to kill them. Every year they invent new ones in the jungles of Africa, in the marshes of Asia, in the deserts of Asia, in the slave pits of Siberia, and the slums of Europe. Rex Roth recorded a record album in the 50s. There was a movement to record poets on record. I think it was the Cademan record label did a good job of recording a lot of the poets. And one of the best ones is Rex Roth reads one whole side and Lawrence Ferlinghetti reads the other side. That excerpt I read, it's just an amazing poem by Rex Roth. It's dedicated to Dylan Thomas, and he'll eventually get to the death of Dylan Thomas in there, but it's very political and it's really a death poem if you like that stuff. Laura, you want to read? Anybody play the piano? Any piano players? I need a piano player.
Can you fake it, Cliff?
Well, crap.
What do you mean? Cliff can always play.
We want to do Dog by Ferlinghetti. On our board up here, obviously there's a link between New York City and San Francisco because, Kerouac and Cassidy would jump in the car and they'd cross the country and go to San Francisco. So even the New York poets participated in the San Francisco Renaissance. And Ferlinghetti was a real jazz poet, and he composed this one poem called Dog, which is a really good poem to do. And I have 2 copies, so I need somebody, to help me. Well, I'll just read it, and then you can get it if you lose you.
Would you say you needed somebody else to read it too?
Well, I lost my glasses. I can't do anything. You want to do it? No, you gonna read that, and you gonna take that mic, and I'm gonna do this. All right, now this is not a boogie woogie poem, so slow down.
I don't know this poem.
The dog trots freely in the street,
And sees reality
and the things he sees
are bigger than himself, and the things he sees.
are his reality.
Drunks in doorways, moons on trees.
The dog trots freely through the street.
And the things he sees are smaller than himself.
Fish
Fish on newsprint, ants in holes.
Chickens in Chinatown windows.
Their heads a block away.
The dog trots
trots
freely in the street. The things he
smells.
something like himself,
The dog trots freely
trots freely
in the street.
past puddles,
And babies,
cats,
cigars, pool
pool
rooms, and policemen.
policemen. He doesn't hate cops,
He merely has no use for them.
and he goes past them.
And past the dead cows hung up whole in front of the San Francisco meat market.
He would rather
Eat
eat
a
a tender cow than a tough policeman.
Though either might do.
And he goes past the ravioli factory
And past Couts Tower.
and past President Trump.
He's afraid of the Trump Tower.
He's not afraid of Pete Hegsmith.
Although what he hears is very discouraging,
Very depressing
depressing, very absurd.
to a sad young dog like himself.
To a serious dog like himself.
But he has his own free world to live in.
His own fleas to eat. He will not be muzzled. Congressman Dole is just another fire hydrant.
The dog trots freely in the street.
And his own dog's life to live. And to think about. And to reflect upon. Touching and tasting and testing every day.
Investigating everything
Without benefit.
of perjury.
A real.
Realist,
With a real.
tale to tell.
And a real.
Tale to tell it with.
A real live.
Barking
Democratic dog engaged in real free enterprise
with something to say.
about ontology,
Something to say.
about reality,
And how to see it.
and how to hear it
With his head cocked sideways.
at street corners,
As if he's just about to have.
his picture taken,
For Victor Records.
listening for
His master's voice.
and looking
Like a living question mark.
into the great gramophone of puzzling existence.
with its wondrous hollow horn,
which always seems
just about to spout forth
some victorious answer
to everything.
to everything. Dog by Lawrenceburg.
Risking absurdity and death. Whenever he performs above the heads of his audience, the poet, like an acrobat, climbs on rhyme to a high wire of his own making, and without mistaking anything for what it not is, for he's the super realist who must perforce taught, perceive, perforce, taught, truth. And before the taking of each step and stance, I haven't memorized this one well enough. Oh, I'm just going to flame out here.
Make it up.
I can't. I'm out of practice. I can't improv. I'll have to read it. Constantly risking absurdity and death whenever he performs above the heads of his audience, the poet, like an acrobat, climbs on rhyme to a high wire of his own making, and balancing on I-beams above a sea of faces, paces his way to the other side of day, performing entree shots and slay-a-foot tricks and other high theatrics. For he's the super realist who must perforce perceive taught truth before the taking of each stance or step in his supposed advance toward that still higher perch where beauty stands and waits with gravity to start her death-defying leap, and he, a little Charlie Chaplin man who may or may not catch her fair eternal form, spread-eagled in the empty air of existence. That's from one of the greatest, the big selling poetry books of all time. Most y'all are familiar with it, Coney Island on the Mind. Let's see, where are we at? Anybody wants to do something, now's your chance. We're in San Francisco, Bob Kaufman, one of the, almost pretty much forgotten today, but he was a very active cat back then. He lived a really interesting life, a New Yorker who ended up in San Francisco, black guy, African-American, merchant marine veteran. But he's an authentic jazz poet. I have a couple of them I could read, but I don't know. He had kind of a tragic end. And it's interpreted two different ways. He quit talking to anybody in 1963 after Kennedy's assassination. Some people say he took a vow of silence because he was just so disenchanted with American politics. And some people say he just was so burnt out on speed that he couldn't talk. So, Momkoff. Jack Michelin is another one who's associated with the Beats, also an East Coast guy who came to San Francisco. He's in there. Back in New York, Kenneth Koch and Larry Rivers. Rivers was a painter, abstract expressionist, and he was also a saxophone player. So these two got together and just started doing some readings as kind of a spoof on the beatnik scene and beat poetry, but it was kind of real popular, so then they got serious and actually did some pretty good stuff and had a good sound. So Ken Nordine, I can't remember exactly where he's from, but he made a lot of records in the 50s and 60s. He had a real good voice. I think he was a television or radio personality, so he had a great voice. He did a number of very popular records in the 60s. Ed Sanders, you rock and rollers will know him as one of the members of the Fugs. So he's more of a rock and roll poet than a jazz poet, but he's a real interesting guy, and wrote a book called Tales of Beatnik Glory that really will enlighten you as to what it was really like back then. I could read some of it. What would Tom Paine do? To spread a little common sense. What would Tom Paine do while he was walking the dog freely in the street? I just made that up. What would Tom Paine do? The problem's so immense that a shout passed mouth to mouth around the world. Protest and survive. Protest and survive. Protest and survive. Protest and survive. I want to be a pamphleteer in the name of Tom Paine's Rights of Man, but what is the name of the pamphlet in the age of laser disc and satellite time? What is the name of the pamphlet that shall soar aloft and beam from mind to mind 1,000,000 miles? And the men of war need the fresh young minds in the labs of doom. We've got to interdict the flow. We've got to interdict the labs of doom, the labs of doom, the labs of doom.
Hey y'all, I'm Beth. Hey buddies. Maybe. Yeah, sound good? Yeah. All right. Here we go. All right, this is titled either For Jesus' Sake or For Jesus' Sake. I'm not sure which. All right. Jesus came to Japan transubstantiated as sake. Let me explain. They say, since every breath we take contains 25 sextillion molecular constituents of air, at least one in each inhale came from murdered Caesar's last breath, like dandelion seeds floating dispersed around the world ever since. How likely then that molecules of water, that magic commingling elixir shed from Jesus' earthly body, as tears, piss, or better, blood, in the millennia since have girdled the globe like the word and spiked every glass, whether wine, whiskey, ayahuasca, sake, soju, tej, or beer, each chaliced cupful, the blood of Christ for real, requiring no ecclesiastical intervention whatsoever. We who drink from a spring, from a crystal flute, a lead-soaked pipe, rain pooled in a leaf, mud puddles, or flower's nectar, will absorb, then exude that reformist rebel juice. And since most of our moist brain is made from the water we consume, there's bound to be a little Jesus swimming amongst our electrical impulses. So, for Jesus' sake, let's attend to our sacred intake and a more moral being make.
Beth's poem had Japan in it, so I wanted to read a really short poem by a contemporary of Ginsberg and all of them. He came over from Japan with Gary Snyder in the 50s and fell in love with the commune world in northern New Mexico and lived out there as well as various places across. He was kind of like a Japanese nomad on Turtle Island and also in Japan. So his name is Nanao Sakaki, and this is a poem by Nanao Sakaki. And each line, if you just want to wail in between for just, and then it's only like 5 lines. If you have time to chatter, read books. If you have time to read, walk into desert, mountain, and ocean. If you have time to walk, sing songs and dance. If you have time to dance, sit quietly, you happy, lucky idiot. Nanao Sakaki.
He's adapted to the modern world. Techno.
Okay, actually, I think I'll read this one right here that has Beth's name in it. Because, you see, one time Beth wrote a poem that was in reverse, and she numbered the sections in reverse. And I thought that was like genius, and I wanted to steal it. And in poetry, you can steal stuff. You just have to say, after so-and-so. And then you can take their stuff. So that's what I did. This is called Emergency. I need my glasses. That's kind of my emergency. And if you guys want to play, that'd be cool. It's Emergency in Reverse. After Beth Stewart. Yeah. 5. I'll never forgive you, Chris says when he wakes up. 4. My friend, motionless, thick-bodied firemen mill about the bed, knock over my nightstand, send an ashtray flying, an explosion of ash. The bare bulb hanging from the ceiling dispels little darkness. An empty pill bottle trundles across the rug. 3. I called 911 from the corner payphone under a howling street lamp. 2. Cindy broke up with Chris, so he comes to stay with me. 1. I'll never leave you, I hear him say to her. When we are all down at the beach, when the moon, so high and bright and full of lies.
Jazz June is June Jordan. You may know her from the poem We Jazz June. Really great little short poem. Charles mentioned Intosatse Shange. Is that her last name? I don't have it up there. I have Sonia Sanchez. Sonia Sanchez is a Birmingham lady. Her real name was Wilsonian Driver. She is the daughter of one of our great jazz drummers who's featured over here, Wilson Driver. She ended up in Philadelphia at Temple University, but lived in New York City for a while and maybe Newark, and was a member of Amiris Baraka's Black Arts movement. There's two things as I got it figured. Jazz poetry could mean one of two things. It could be anything, poem like Ferlinghetti's Dog Walks Freely in the Street that is set to jazz, or it could be, you're talking about jazz. So you didn't have a lot of poets writing about the swing era, but for some reason they really took to the musicians of the bebop era. I've already mentioned Charlie Parker. He was the number one musician who is referenced in a lot of jazz poetry. And then the second one would be Billie Holiday, and then Lester Young. Those three are kind of, get more ink from the poets. But then all the greats of the bebop generation, Bird, Dish, Train, Monk, all of them, were written about from the poets. We got Baraka up there. He's hard to see, but he's famous for the Black Arts movement, and they did a lot of jazz poetry. We have Joy Harjo up there, former poet laureate of the United States, an Indian woman who actually taught herself to play the saxophone. And she also got addicted to heroin, so there's some jazz credentials there that we don't want. But she worked through that and to become our poet laureate. She's a really, really good poet. I've got one of her books over there. Jane Cortez. Jane Cortez, I think she's probably dead, so you won't get a chance to see her. But she had a band called the Fire Spitters. And she was a fire-spitting poet. She was a powerful, powerful force, really rhythmic poet, and she really was a fire-spitter. Raul Salinas was a Texas poet who I met when I lived out there in Texas. He had a little bookstore, and I worked for him. He also played the saxophone, and he's one of the granddads of the Chicano poetry scene. So who else we got? John Sinclair, you might know him. He was a rock and roller from the MC5 band, but he also did a lot of jazz poetry. He ended up, he spent some years in prison, and then he ended up in New Orleans. I saw him at a conference down there. He had a little band cranking out some poetry. Very political people. In the 60s, he formed something he called the White Panther Party up in Detroit. Very radical fellow, John Sinclair. Quincy is Quincy Troop. He's another award-winning poet. I think he's from St. Louis. Gil Scott-Heron, everybody knows him. He's kind of linked in there as a forerunner of rap poetry, and of course he's real famous for the revolution not being televised, but it sure as hell is on TikTok and YouTube. Okay, Al Young, another African-American poet. All these guys on the bottom are contemporary African-American poets. Al Young, Yusef, I cannot pronounce his last, Komanyaka. He's from New Orleans cat. Michael S. Harper, Calvin Marvin Bell, Calvin Forbes. I don't know a lot about those guys. We got Michael Harper on tape over here doing a ode to Coltrane's Love Supreme. But those are three guys who we need to check out. Steve Dalachinsky is a guy I wasn't familiar with until I did the research for this reading. New York City poet, so I'm going to check him out. Hedwig and Djama on the bottom are a couple of Texas friends of mine. They're in Lafayette now, but they're still with us, and they do jazz poetry. And last but not least, in the bottom left, we have our Charles's friends, Peter Rabbit and Annie Mac, and they had a band called Luminous Animal. They were the main movers and shakers of the Taos Poetry Circus, which was one of the great poetry festivals of the country for a period of 20 or 30 years. Peter's no longer with us, but Peter was a Black Mountain poet. I don't know if the Black Mountain poets did jazz. I haven't found a link there. So that's all of them that I got up there. And but they all, you know, if you're interested in jazz poetry, they can all be checked out.
Something made the birds scatter, but it was only natural. They had congregated so boldly in the middle of the day with no one around. I'll read one more. The good death. I want to die today. The good death. The one where you throw off your shoes and toss them into a deep lake. You can play music. You want to play? The one where you take really big scissors and cut off all your hair with one dramatic snip. The one where clothes don't exist and the weather is perfect for that. The one where you eat an orange fresh from the tree and the juice dribbles down your chin, but you don't notice because it's so good. The one where everything moves in slow motion and everyone's cool with that because it's endlessly entertaining, really. The one where people hand paint the outside of buildings, and the one where a single person playing a single guitar can bring those who hear it to tears. The one where light streams into the room as the baby is just waking up singing. The one where the bed is just so comfortable and the town is just so quiet, except for the crickets. Except for the crickets. The crickets.
All right, you two musicians, you want to wig out?
Can we wig out?
Don't ask me what that means, I just remember it. Wigging out. But y'all are welcome to just really let go with this. Don't restrain yourself. Bird and Diz. Bird and Diz. Bird and Diz. Bird and Diz were the acknowledged leaders of the bebop revolution. Oh, the two had little in common. They would experience a widely divergent destiny. Bird was an outsider from the get-go, even inside professional music circles. Whereas Diz was so he ended up a leader of the big band jazz, from which he, Bird, and fellow beboppers initially rebelled. Diz got his start playing with Cabsman, but soon grew bored with the swing style, which was going out of fashion, especially among the young hip players. Diz was an inveterate prankster, fond of throwing spitballs. Once threw a spitball at Cab on stage. In the middle of the song, when the two got in a fight, Diz drew his pocket knife and sliced Cab's vein, after which, of course, Cab gave him the old high ho! Meanwhile, Bird blew alto in a style patterned on the great Prez from Count's band, though Prez played tenor in a style more fit for alto, making him something of an outsider likewise. In fact, some credit Prez as the original hipster, even though most consider Cowcat. As a youngster, Bird blew so bad. Bird blew bad. Bird blew so bad he was booed off stage by fellow players. But after serious woodshedding, Bird came back strong and blew so newly bad, it would drive the revolution soon to come. Evolution of the revolution, a bit murky here, though a consensus of historians claim there's no such intent, or that the youngsters were simply bored and looking for whatever came next. Out with the old, in with the new, story of the world. Out with the old, in with the new. Out with the old, in with the new. I don't think Hank done it that way. A Ballad of the Beat Generation. Jack wrote the book on Neil. Though in the book, they're not called Jack and Neil. Rather, Dean and Sal. Jack had met Neil through Neil's pal Al. Al wrote the book that brought the poets together when he first read the book at the famous San Francisco Sixth Gallery reading in 1955. Jack named the book that Al wrote. Jack also named the famous book written by Al's pal Bill. Bill's book was deemed obscene. Couldn't get printed. Got busted. Bill's book was published by Al's pal Larry. Larry owned a store where he could sell the books written by his pals, printed by him. Larry had been in attendance that night at the Sixth Gallery, during which Jack had met Larry's pal Gary. Jack wrote his next book on Gary, though in the book he is not called Gary, rather Jaffe. In this book are details of the Sixth Gallery reading, which brought together the poets of the generation, which of course Jack named, as Jack was a designated namer of things. Together these books and a few more made the whole gang famous and helped change the course of American literary history. Though today I doubt your average Joe could name 5 Beat Generation poets. Public library with David Rome's name on it. You know he got thrown in prison, don't you? Yeah, he went out to Texas and, he turned into a big money donor, but there was something funny about his money, so he ended up in prison.
Oh, wow. That's messed up. Okay. I'd like to try an improv. I wrote a poem recently about Donald Trump and his gold, so I don't have it with me, but I'd like to maybe try and improv something from what I can remember. This isn't a poem about the golden age of jazz. This is a poem about your gold, Donald. Your trees are gold. Your spray tan is gold. Your Trump Tower is gold. A golden raven lands on your gilded railings outside the east wing. The bird's wing glitters. in the sun. The sun is not yellow, but it is yellow. It's not golden, it's yellow. The yellow sun that burns your skin, that burns down in the South. The South. The South that voted for you, Donald. You and your gold. Your gold. Your gold that destroys their wheat, that burns their wheat. Your gold. A craven cavern, a God cage. This country worships you like it's trapped in a God cage. As our golden cars go careening past golden stalagmites dripping from your golden ceiling.
Very well. Okay, this is a little bit from his chapter called C.C. Ryder. The man who owned the bookstore was not magic. He was not a three-legged crow on the dandelion side of the mountain. He was, of course, a Jew, a retired merchant seaman who had been torpedoed in the North Atlantic and floated there day after day until death did not want him. He had a young wife, a heart attack, a Volkswagen, and a home in Marin County. He liked the works of George Orwell, Richard Aldington, and Edmund Wilson. He learned about life at 16, first from Dostoevsky, and then from the hordes in New Orleans. The bookstore was a parking lot for used graveyards. Thousands of graveyards were parked in rows like cars. Most of the books were out of print, and no one wanted to read them anymore, and the people who had to read the books had died or forgotten about them. But through the organic process of music, the books had become virgins again. They wore their ancient copyrights like new maidenheads. I went to the bookstore in the afternoons after I got off work during the terrible year of 1959.
And what was the name of it?
It's Richard Browning.
That's, well, what's next? I want to be considered a jazz poet, going along blues in an afternoon jam session on Sunday. I take 242 courses. My ideas vary and sometimes roll from chorus to chorus or from halfway through a chorus to halfway into the next. That's when I read to start this off, and I'm going to finish it unless somebody else has something they're going to do. We'll stay. I'm not in a hurry.
I've
Young
got
Beth
one
has
more.
raised her hand. You want,
Yeah, I've
you
got
want
one
some
more if that's okay. I don't want to.
Everything, anything,
Come on.
all is permitted.
All right.
Everything is permitted.
All right.
Not really.
I don't know if it's jazzy.
That's okay. We're beyond jazz now. I'm glad Carl snuck that one in about the free jazz. The free jazz movement came in right after the bebop.
All right. Okay, this one's about embodiment. Some of you guys have heard this one. All right. If I lived only inside the poem. If I lived only inside the poem in my head, instead of the poem in my feet, my dreams would not know the power to press against earth the rush and leap that propels flying, or the relished risk of stretching to scale a cliff face, how to refresh an exhausted walk with the swirl of cool water, foam, and sand, the humility of traversing Earth's parade of landscapes, or the immense space that must be crossed in a few steps to meet you. If I lived only inside the poem in my head instead of the poem in my uterus, I wouldn't understand emptiness. I'd have no conception of shame's rejection alongside regret, or the urgent necessity to reframe what it means to be woman. I wouldn't know yearning that subsumes all sins, the indomitable urge to care and carry, how to endure cycles of unavoidable pain, to bleed as a cleanse and begin again. If I lived only inside the poem in my head instead of the poem in my guts, what profound disconnects would plague my digestion of inputs? Experiences not recognized as deadly or delicious, stupidly repeated, or never sought again. What hard life decisions would wander untethered, uncertain, never settling? And how would I know when I have or am enough? If I lived only inside the poem in my head, absent from the fullness of my flesh, assembling meaning would be elusive as eggshell scraps in albumin, slipping between my fingers, as haunting Selkie songs obscured in sea winds and never deciphered by the landlocked, as a pattern of Pleiades above a city dimly seen only when regarding the surrounding dark, as holy words, not yet on the tip of my tongue.
Thanksgiving Prayer, 1986. Thanks for the wild turkey and the passenger pigeons destined to be shit out through wholesome American guts. Thanks for a continent to despoil and poison. Thanks for Indians to provide a modicum of challenge and danger. Thanks for vast herds of bison to kill and skin, leaving the carcasses to rot. Thanks for bounties on wolves and coyotes. Thanks for the American dream to vulgarize and to falsify until the bare lies shine through. Thanks for a country where nobody's allowed to mind their own business. Thanks for a nation of thinks. They're all up there in Washington, D.C.
I got nothing left in the tank. 9 o'clock, right on time. This has been inspiring. I need to go home and ride home. Thanks for the videographers. Thanks for the musicians. Clifford come all the way from Utah. Brought some Utah jazz. Side come all the way from Cahaba Heights.